Yo, what the hell's up? Welcome back to Reviews with Jake, where I just got done watching How It Ends. How It Ends is an apocalyptic tale about a girl facing the last day on Earth with an imaginary younger version of herself. The two of them team up, decide to say f*** it, and go out and clear the air on several clouds, regrets that they had in life. In case any of you jerks are doubting my commitment to the game, know this. Originally my plan entailed watching both A Classic Horror Story and Gunpowder Milkshake, two movies that came out on the exact same day, watch and review them the same week and knock two of them out in 1 week. Release one, watch and review Old the following week, and then post the other one I didn't post before. This would subsequently give me a weekend off in a couple weeks. I had it all planned out. I was ready to kick back and relax. Then I see Glenn Howerton drop this trailer on Instagram talking about this new movie on VOD, and I regretfully watched the trailer and I'm hooked. I'm intrigued. For one, it has several prestigious film festival laurels attached to it, including Sundance, and normally that means something good. But I'm also interested in the premise, the whole end of days apocalypse thing. I feel like it lends itself to have a film with a lot of heart to it. And the cameos. My God, the amount of familiar faces I saw pop up in the trailer. I mean, I guess it's a COVID film, a film during the pandemic, so I don't think they all had a lot going on at the time, but still, to see that many funny people, funny faces crammed into one film, I mean, there has to be something there. So I too decided to say f*** it and squeezed in another film. Why? Why do I do this to myself? I could have been relaxing, sipping on a pina colada on my back porch because I live in Iowa. Might as well watch another movie. Well, the pros start with something that I already mentioned before, this being a COVID film. I mentioned in my review of Malcolm and Marie that I'm very curious to see the media that comes out, the stuff that was produced during the pandemic. I'm curious to see what it looks and feels like. Some are gonna come in the form of a small cast, one location, which logically makes sense in this sort of thing. Or I guess in this case, a film that takes place all throughout the whole city of LA, having 1,000 familiar faces and comedians popping up all over the place. Seriously, it was insane. It felt like a Seth MacFarlane film. Like, I still to this day don't understand why so many people, everyone under the sun, is wanting to be in his movies, in his shows. That's how this film feels. The sheer quantity of familiar faces that pop up, all the cameos, it really kept me on the edge of my seat guessing who's gonna pop up next. In terms of the quality versus quantity, of course, the quantity was there. The quality, I don't know. Yeah, it was nice. I wasn't blown away by any of the appearances, but they all gave me at least a solid light chuckle. They all probably gave a nice fun day on set. Hell, not even a full day. Probably just a couple hours is probably all that these scenes took individually. It allowed a lot of really funny people to go somewhere and just be funny at a time where not a lot of people were laughing. I'm sure it was solid escapism for everyone involved. This had to have also included Zoe Lister-Jones, who happens to play not only our lead protagonist, but is also the writer and director of the film. I'd be lying if I said I was familiar with any of her work prior to this one, but I'd say she turned in a decent performance. Was it amazing or groundbreaking? No, but factoring in the fact she was also helming the film, simultaneously being in front of the camera at every single scene, I mean, I respect that. I've been there before. I've tried to do that, wear multiple hats on a film, and it is not an easy thing to do. I thought she did a very serviceable job in front of the camera, and I hope she got out of this film, both behind the camera and in front of it, whatever it was she was hoping to get out of it during such a crazy time to be making a movie like this. In a sense, it kind of reminded me of Bo Burnham's new special on Netflix, Inside, the one he produced throughout the whole pandemic and is sitting on Netflix right now. Is it the funniest thing in the world? No. But it's very clearly a coping mechanism. Like, this is the thing that I'm gonna put all of my blood, sweat, tears, energy, productivity, and time into to stay sane in a very insane time. I could feel that with this movie. I mean, it wasn't as on the nose as Bo Burnham's special was, but still I could feel like the director, the writer, our lead actress put a lot of herself into this movie, which is kind of an absurd claim to make. I don't know her personally. I don't know Bo Burnham personally, but having watched the things that both of them created during the pandemic, during a time where we were all vulnerable, it kind of feels like I saw a little glimpse inside each of their minds. I mean, how often can you truly say that, really truly feel that out of a film? However, that being said, honestly, I'm just trying to be really nice right now because I did not really enjoy this movie at all, and I feel kind of terrible about it. Is it because I watched Chris Stuckman's recent video where he talked about not enjoying shitting on other people's films, being a filmmaker themselves? Did that strike a chord with me? Perhaps. Don't get me wrong, if a film is bad, the day of reckoning with me is going to come, but that doesn't mean that every bad film is created equal. For instance, let's look at The Unholy, the first film I ever had to blacken my heart to slap an F on in all of my 5 or so years of reviewing films. Everything about that film just reeked of subpar, generic horror BS that had not a single ounce of passion or heart invested into it. Did people care about the movie? Yeah, probably, but I just did not feel that care as I watched it. But this film, I don't know, maybe it was the fact that I know it was produced during a pandemic and that answers a lot of questions that I have as to why certain things happen the way that they do. And knowing that everyone involved, including the writer, director, lead actress combo, as well as every single cameo that pops up, probably needed this outlet to help them get through such a wild time. A wild time that we all went through, you, me, everyone. I mean, it sucked. 2020 sucked. And we all got through it in different ways. And if for these people that thing to help them get through was making a movie at a time that was screaming for them to not collaborate and make a movie, I hope they got everything out of this movie as they hoped to get at the onset of this very ambitious project. I mean, they did it against all odds. I mean, that's awesome from one fellow filmmaker as well as just a fellow human being. But as a film critic, a role that I am committed to, as explained earlier in this video, the movie that they made just wasn't very good. Let's start on something we kind of touched on a little bit in the pros, the comedy. The comedy in this film was very light, very laid back, very casual, which can be a good thing. I mean, it's kind of like what I said about Gunpowder Milkshake. It kind of sets the bar, sets the expectations at a nice relaxing level. Both fun movies, but not necessarily funny, especially with this movie. I mean, Gunpowder Milkshake had its fair share of misses, but this movie misses probably a lot more than it hits. It was just this awkward, cringy sense of humor that this movie had, and it just did not do much for me at all. Same goes, interestingly enough, with the film's heart. I mean, this movie had just no emotional payout to it. The core premise of this movie is this girl walking around kind of righting all the wrongs that she has in her life, kind of burying the hatchet and ending on a high note. As a result, the film feels just kind of aimless. Like, it just kind of floats around LA, like, literally. I mean, the formula for the entire film is walk in the middle of the street, having a conversation, funny cameo. Middle of the street conversation, funny cameo. Middle of the street conversation, funny cameo. Repeat. It just does not feel like the film builds toward anything, which makes the pace just feel horribly boring and drawn out. This film is 1 hour and 20 minutes, and I swear it felt like a 2+ hour film. I mean, it just kept dragging. I was really hoping to get some emotional payout, some resolution. I mean, damn, that's the name of this movie. This girl walking around trying to get resolution with people and herself. It hints at some backstories, previous relationships as these encounters happen, but it just doesn't give you a clear enough picture to really make you feel invested in the conversations, in the exchanges, to make it feel like you walk away with anything profound or meaningful. And at the end of the albeit very short runtime, I just felt nothing. It was anticlimactic. I just feel like I watched a couple girls walk around the streets of LA for shy of 1.5 hours, which it's kind of weird. And it frankly wasn't even an enjoyable documentation of this walk. I didn't like the way it was filmed or edited. The camera work was very uninspiring, no cool framing or compositions, a lot of generic point and shoot, not a lot of movement, a lot of just static shots on sticks. And on the flip side, I thought it was over edited. A lot of unnecessary cuts. It'd be a simple conversation between two people talking to each other with a one shot on each. And it felt like I was playing ping pong, like they were trying to manufacture movement in the edit. At one point, they incorporate this split screen look, kind of like a comic book panel, but they never returned to anything remotely resembling that style at all. So it just kind of feels like an outlier. All in all, I did not enjoy this movie, which is a bummer considering the ambition involved for it being a COVID production. The sheer amount of cameos, only a few of them needing to deliver their lines via FaceTime or Zoom, which if you were to video the last 1.5 years, that's a feat. But unfortunately, the film did very little for me. It relied too heavily on recognizing familiar faces to generate excitement, entertainment value, but just ultimately fell short. I'm going to give How It Ends a D+. Honestly, this movie is a perfect illustration of the other side of the coin about my curiosity toward COVID-produced films. Like, if you had told me that Malcolm and Marie was filmed during normal times, I would have believed you, because the core premise lends itself naturally to that environment. Like, if you had told me that The Lighthouse was filmed during COVID, I would have believed you, even though it wasn't. But on the flip side, this movie just feels like a COVID movie. The streets of LA are barren, and the few people you are seeing are all keeping an odd, uncomfortable distance from each other. I mean, it's just these little cracks in the funhouse mirror. This movie could have really benefited from being filmed during regular times. You'd be able to see the difference, whereas Malcolm and Marie, I don't think it really would have changed the final product. I think that is the difference. But that's just me. What do you guys think? Let me know if you agree or disagree in the comments below. And make sure you subscribe to this channel to stay up to date with new reviews coming real soon. Stay safe. Thanks for checking in.